Oh, there we go.
Hello and welcome to the Lakers Theory podcast. We are live up on YouTube and on Facebook at Lakers Theory. The last time we went live, there were people who commented on there. We just didn't see it. So if you do comment on it at any point this time during the show, we will put it up on the screen or whatever and get to it as well. But that's not the important thing. I just wanted to get that out of the way first. I'm Shane Jackson. Joining with me, as always, is Austin Case. And the Lakers are officially in the playoffs because I didn't consider the play-in game playoffs like Austin did last time. But that was a wild win, Austin. 103-100 over the Warriors in the play-in game. They are now officially the 7th seed in the postseason. They will get the Suns starting with Game 1 on Sunday. Austin, initial takeaway from what was a really wild win over the Warriors is the only way to describe
it. Well, you don't consider it a playoff game, but that sure felt like a playoff game to me. I don't know. Like, I couldn't watch it. Like, we were together last night, and anytime that my eyes were glued to my phone watching this game, the Lakers were down double digits. I step away, they bring it within 5, and so it kind of sucked because I wanted to be invested in this game, but I put the team above all else, and I knew if I didn't watch, things would be okay. But like, I locked in on that last 5 or 6 minutes, and I was like, whatever happens, happens. And all I know is watching a game of this magnitude at a bar is very hard. Like, that's not for me. I could not do that again. People would not leave me alone because they were questioning me about watching a game, on a Wednesday night at a bar. And so I did have to isolate myself from everybody for a little while, but it all worked out, and we got the dub.
Moral of the story is Austin deserves more credit than LeBron James for this victory. He stopped watching, and therefore the team did better. That's what I'm hearing anyways. Let's start with LeBron James, because I think that is the biggest takeaway was his shot that was the game-winning, ended up being the go-ahead game winner when he hit that 3 late in the shot clock. Really, it was the only option he had at that point when the ball got to him, and he launched it from 30 feet in the air. Fittingly enough, against Steph Curry, who hits a number of those threes. And Steph just looked as defeated as almost every opponent who's ever guarded him when he's hit those threes. You could just see it in his face. Like, there's nothing he could have done differently. And that's similar to how the Lakers probably felt at times guarding him, although he didn't make as many threes as I expected him to, or take as many threes as I expected him to. But no, LeBron James hits the game winner. Really, we watched this together. I told you, just keep it close, get to the fourth quarter, and LeBron James will have his fingerprints on this game. And that's pretty much what happened. I don't think he was as effective as a scorer or as aggressive as a scorer, especially early on. But that fourth quarter really started with him. He was the catalyst of that offense. He was getting guys involved, and that's when the game kind of changed. And then he obviously hits, the big shot in the end. But it's just a reminder that even though, I feel like there's some sort of semblance of LeBron having to get in a rhythm still, because this is only his 3rd game back from the latest injury rehab. So he's still getting in rhythm, but he still has so much control over the game in so many different ways other than just scoring. And last night he ended up hitting the shot as well. Give me your LeBron thoughts and what your emotions were from the fourth quarter performance.
I was so nervous. And even though they weren't, the season wasn't over if they lost last night, but like that's just, if the season was over to me if they would have lost, like, even though they could have easily ended up being the 8th seed, but like, that was a must win. The Suns are a better matchup than the Jazz, so like, for me, that was a must win game. That was do or die. For LeBron, like, he took that very aggressive flagrant foul like a man, and then he called game like that. That just, he took over the game. He was the leader of this team, and he said, we are going to win this game. He took that shot, and the results are the results.
And yes, it's obnoxious that he said he was seeing 3 rims and he just aimed from the middle one. Obviously, there's some exaggeration going on there on his end. But before you start calling him out, just remember that people still believe Michael Jordan just ate a pizza instead of being super hungover before the flu game. So let's stop criticizing LeBron over seeing 3 rims here too much, because I mean he's just corny in general. But no, I mean, look at that 10 assists there by LeBron. I'm in 1 turnover. Like, he's just the impact as a passer. I mean, the scoring will be there. I thought, he really was not doing well at finishing through contact early on. I don't think he was ready for that physical style of play. And that's going to lead me into the next discussion point here is this game in so many ways. And I think we alluded to this a couple of days ago when we did the show previewing the playing game, but this game reminded me so much of Game 1 against the Blazers in the playoffs last year. Like, the Blazers had to be in playoff mode entering that game, and then they were the hot team, and the Lakers hadn't been. They hadn't been in that zone in the bubble, and so they came out kind of stagnant and flat and stuff like that. And they ended up losing Game 1. And that was a very real possibility here for much of the game as well. I mean, the Warriors were 15-5 entering this game. The Lakers had, barely had their pieces together, and they hadn't played too many games where they had to actually be full go. And the Warriors have been full go for the last month and a half. So I thought it was all the makings of what could have been a potential disaster. I mean, because the Lakers could have easily lost that game and then been fighting for the 8 seed as well. And that's what I attribute, I think, the first few quarters to. Just the fact that the Lakers weren't ready necessarily, haven't been as equipped for a situation like that as maybe the Warriors, or is similar to last year as well. I think the difference is that there's going to be still some more growing pains along the way through the postseason, whereas we saw kind of that full team together last year. At times, we're still going to deal with growing pains with this team, but I think that's what was led to maybe that kind of. I think I don't know exactly how you phrased it over the text, but you basically were kind of concerned over the way they played for the first 3 quarters. Is my reasoning sound, or am I just coming up with excuses?
No, I think it sounds good. Like, they're going to have to figure out things on the fly, for the first game or two. Like, they're still a new squad, essentially. They're still trying to figure each other out. And we kind of knew that coming into this game, where we thought that could cause issues with them just coming out and smacking them early and stuff. And they had to scrap. They scrapped this entire game. And essentially it just came down to, really LeBron and AD just kind of, taking over this game with Caruso actually provided a big help in that. Yeah. I kind of saw things like, if Caruso wasn't playing as well as he was in those the first half, really, this game could have gotten out of hand very quickly. And I mean, they were down 13 at halftime. That's not a big hole to climb out of, but it could have been way worse because, LeBron, AD, and Schroeder were just flat out terrible for, the first 2 quarters. And so the role guys, the role players definitely kind of kept us in this game and essentially gave LeBron a chance to bring it home.
Yeah, I thought the splits were pretty stark with AD and LeBron. The first half, their numbers, if you compare it to the second half, that was the difference in the game. And that's going to be the case for the next 16 victories if they're able to do that as well, because the Lakers will go as they go, and that's how it happens. But you do, like you said, need the role players to step up when they are not necessarily playing as well. Really, I mean, if you wanted to script a way the Lakers would have lost that game, it would have been the first 3 quarters of that game. The Warriors have been in a situation similar to this over the past month, and so they were more ready for it, and they were ready for the more physical style postseason intense matchup than maybe the Lakers were. Then you come out and you get Dennis Schroeder, AD, and LeBron combining for 2 of their first 22 shots. Lakers missed a lot of wide open looks early on, and Steph, he broke free against like Dennis Schroeder and stuff like that. And Wiggins obviously played well as well. So I think honestly, that's what makes me more confident about the Lakers than I probably was a couple of days ago, is because I thought they played great defense. The Warriors played great defense on the Lakers, and the Lakers key players didn't play that well, definitely for the first 3 quarters, and they still come away with a win in a playoff kind of must-win type of atmosphere. So, and really the concern about this team all along has been health, and when your star player LeBron James shows that he is somewhat, I think he's healthy. It was just him getting back into a rhythm. I'm less concerned now about that in general, and so I think if anything, last night, I know it wasn't pretty by any means, and it was exciting down the stretch, but I'm more optimistic than I probably expected to be after the playing game.
Yeah, I definitely feel good moving forward because it's not one game. It's not one game at a time now, essentially. But the role players, they know what their job is, and they they do a great job at filling their role. And I think that could give them an edge, deeper into the playoffs if, LeBron and AD and Schroeder are kind of, just off for a quarter or two. Like you can count on these other guys off the bench just to kind of, keep the game in check, essentially. And so just to kind of see some of those bench guys just come in and, keep this game winnable is just it just kind of gives me more confidence once we face tougher teams deeper into the playoffs, if we get there.
Yeah, and I've rewatched this game today. The reason why the game was very exciting to me, not only because LeBron's game winner, but Alex Caruso, who's my second favorite Laker, was exceptional. And you kind of alluded to him earlier. Let's talk about him now. He fired a shot that hits the side of the backboard down the stretch there, but immediately comes back and forces a turnover on Steph on the next possession. Then he throws a pass to AD that leads to a dunk. He finds LeBron cutting, and that leads to the foul with Draymond Green at the rim, where LeBron lost vision, so to speak. And so, I thought Alex Caruso's, fingerprints were all over this game as well down the stretch. And really, it speaks volumes to just how much he has grown as a player. He could have let a shot like that affect his play down the stretch, and he didn't. He was exceptional on defensive end, getting guys involved as well. Players were trusting him. And I think it's pretty clear any closing lineup going forward has to include AD, LeBron, and Alex Caruso. The other two guys are up in the air, depending on the matchups and stuff like that and who's playing well. But Alex Caruso is amazing, and I love him very much. And he not only kept them afloat in the first half, but his play down the stretch was pivotal.
Yes, there were a few plays, both the threes that he hit. I saw both of those, and they just came at times where you felt like the game could get out of hand for the Lakers. And then he just kind of comes through and hits a shot here and then, kind of tips it back. So it's really nice to kind of see that, especially from Caruso. You don't I know we kind of talked about this all year, how his offensive abilities have kind of, they've grown a lot and he's gotten a lot better. But you still don't necessarily expect him to kind of carry that weight where he's, the top bench scorer. Without going back to every game and checking, I don't think he, that's him. You're not going to get that every night. So, like you said, the shot he put off the side of the board, it didn't really look like it affected him, but it's kind of he's not out there to initiate the offense and create shots for himself. He's going to take a shot if he hasn't. If he misses, he's going to get back on defense and play his game. That that's his key role. Is so it's good to see that. And yes, like he needs to be in the closing lineup with LeBron and AD, and the other two guys. It can be matchup based, and so it, like it with him, LeBron, and AD in that closing lineup, like that's it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, and Wesley Matthews also played really well down the stretch, especially. He played a lot of minutes there in the second half. I think all of 14 of his minutes was in the second half. And he drew a charge late in the game. It was pretty good. And his presence in there was part of the whole changing of the lineup for the Lakers because AD switched to the 5, and it clicked right away. AD, after not playing the center position hardly at all year. I mean, minutes are very few and far between, I think, from the regular season for AD at the 5, something we've alluded to basically since the start of the season. And I think it's always been somewhat overblown because I thought at some point in postseason you're going to just play AD at 5 and guys will figure it out. But I think there are some concerns in the way that they just haven't played with that lineup that much. But it looked good when they did in the second half, and it was really the difference in the game. AD playing at the 5 and playing 4 guards around him or 4 wings around him. What did you think about that group in particular?
That's AD at the 5 is a lineup that gets it done, essentially. Like that, just that type of lineup is a very strong defensive. It's a strong lineup, and like I really hope we see that more in the playoffs because we know we have proof in the championship banner that can win games. And so like I think him willingly moving to that position to win, for a chance to win another championship, for me it would be a no-brainer. And so we'll just kind of have to see how things unfold, though.
Yeah, I think he'll play more at the 5 moving forward. So I'm not as worried about it. I mean, you have to figure out how to juggle these center minutes. And it's not like I don't think Drummond played that bad. Like I feel like maybe Lakers Twitter overblows how bad he is sometimes, but I thought he was fine. I think the spacing is different when AD is at the 5. That's the big picture look at what is different about this group. And AD, I mean, himself seems more engaged at times on both ends of the floor. So I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I think they're going to use that lineup a lot more. I think there's some element to getting other centers involved because they have 4 centers basically on this team. So you have to kind of balance these minutes somewhat. But when the team needs it, especially down the stretch in crunch time, AD is going to play at the 5. The Lakers are going to play the Suns. We've talked about how that was the ideal, I guess, first-round matchup from our perspective anyways. Any quick thoughts on that series? Our plan is to really record a podcast probably after every single game for the rest of the postseason. Hopefully it's 16 more victories, and we'll try to do it. Maybe not every night. It's going to be the night after the game, but we'll try to do it as much as possible right after the game and kind of have fresh thoughts on that. But if not, at worst, maybe a day or two later. So quick preview of the Suns, but I think we'll learn more about how these two teams match up as the course of the series goes on. So we won't have to dive too deep into the matchups. But what are you expecting and what are you looking forward to this series?
I look forward to them being able to, essentially just kind of slow down. Like, they're gonna travel to Phoenix and be there for 4 or 5 days, whatever. Like, I feel like this is gonna be beneficial for the Lakers to kind of be in this 7-game series with one team because it's just gonna allow them to not cool off, but kind of just relax a little bit, and they can just focus on what they need to do to beat this one team. And if they drop game 1, which tends to happen for them, they can fix it, and they have a day in between the game or 2 days, whatever it may be. Like they have time to correct the things that need to be corrected. And it's not just nonstop travel and nonstop on the move for them. So I think now can be very beneficial for them just from that aspect of having one opponent and just, multiple nights to, maybe get more practices in over the next month or two than they did all season. So just that aspect, I think, can be very beneficial for them.
I'm super excited because, it felt like last year in the playoffs, anytime in the series, like it just felt like the Lakers and Frank Vogel were going to figure out how to guard, the team. Like they were going to come up with a defensive game plan that worked at some point in the series because it's a 7-game series, and they were going to be able to work out a defensive game plan and execute it eventually. Maybe that took a game or two to figure it out in some cases, but I'm looking forward to that as well because I don't think that's been a drop off by any means. I mean, this team led wire to wire in the net defensive rating, even without 63, 62 combined games without LeBron and AD. I mean, that's just insane how they were able to figure that out. Again, Alex Caruso, big part of that as well, but Frank Vogel as well is a big part of that. And so I'm looking forward to just that element of it, kind of the strategy and figuring out how the Lakers figure out what's the best way to attack certain teams based off the matchups. And we will learn more about how the Lakers, match up with the Suns really after the first game, which is on Sunday. But I will put you on the record here with your prediction on how long this series lasts and who wins. I have a good idea who you think wins, but Austin, tell me, how many games is it going to take for the series to end, and who do you have advancing the next round?
I think the Lakers will be gentlemen, and they will give the Suns one game, whether it's game 1 or game 4. Like the Suns will get one game. So I have the Lakers in 5.
You said Lakers in 6 this morning, and you chickened out because I have not backed out. I have not backed down on Lakers in 5. It's Lakers in 5. I think the Lakers give up game 2. I will say to the Suns, and it's a 4-1 win. And moving on to the next round. Spoiler alert: I'm probably gonna say Lakers in 5 for the rest of the postseason. So let's hope we're right. Let's hope at least we got 16 more victories because we're 1 down, 16 to go. He's Austin Case. I'm Shane Jackson. Thank you so much for listening to a Lakers Theory podcast. We'll keep doing these shows for as long as the Lakers are in the postseason. So until then, see you next time, Lakers fans.